Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the State of the Bird for the third quarter of 2023. This one is subtitled Pigeons Don't Migrate. Funny thing that happens in chat, we get asked all the time, when Pidgin's going to get rewritten in Rust? Somebody looked it up, and apparently pigeons, the actual birds, don't migrate south for the winter or north in the southern hemisphere or whatever. So that's not the joke. But anyways, welcome everyone. Let's get right into it. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. There we go. Or not. Let's try again. There we go. Okay. So what is the State of the Bird? It is a presentation to explain what's going on in the project. Pidgin 3's development has been in progress for a very, very, very long time. Things are moving actually quite quickly, but not so much that people are able to follow along. So we decided to do these presentations as an interactive event for the community so that people can see what's going on and ask questions with what's happening and so on. So that's what this is. All right, so let's start off with the retrospective. So our last State of the Bird was on July 28th, 2023. And our next one is tentatively scheduled for January 18th, 2024. I can't believe it's almost 2024. Anyways, that's another story. That'll also mark 8 years since I took over the project, which is unreal, but that's a whole nother story. One of the other things, this is an interactive presentation. What that means is, as you see in the box underneath the presentation on your screen, you can type !ask, and then your question in chat whenever you want, and that'll get queued up for the question and answer session that we'll have when I get through the presentation. So, all right, continuing to move along. We'll start off with our metrics. So looking at contributors, you can see we're sitting around our normal 3 contributors. Or whatever, a year ago, a little more than a year ago, we were a bit higher, but that's okay, right? We're definitely making progress. You'll see that in the rest of the metrics, but there's been 3 people that have contributions in this time frame, or in the third quarter of 2023. So review requests. We fluctuated a bit. Q2, if you remember, I was on hiatus, a much needed mental break for about 2 months. So our Q2 numbers were really low. It took us a little bit to ramp back up from that, but you can see we almost doubled all the numbers from Q2, right? So we're doing much better there. We're getting a lot of stuff done. There's actually, so these metrics only count up until October 31st. No, sorry. It should be July, August, September to September 30th, right? And we have, I think we're already around 140 for Q4 already, starting from the beginning of October. So we're definitely on, we're definitely getting more work done now. But yeah, so, just kind of looking at the graph, seeing how things are going, that kind of stuff. All right, issues. These are issues that are in our issue tracker. Tickets open versus closed. We're not doing a whole lot of this right now. We've been trying to put the stuff we're working on in as tickets so people can try to follow along more and give us more structure, but it's hard. Because a lot of the times, like, you're doing something and then you're like, oh, well, this is broke. Let me fix this real quick, blah, 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 right? And you don't always remember to open a ticket for it. So, but yeah, so there's been 16 open. We've closed 17. So, we've netted -1 tickets. So that's all right. These tickets, these could be support requests. These could be us doing design proposals and then breaking the work done for those proposals down to smaller tickets and then completing those tickets, all sorts of stuff. So yeah. All right, commits. So again, remember Q2, everything is waning, blah, blah, blah. That's okay. But in Q3, so Pidgin 3 had 102 commits versus 29. Quarter before that versus 199. A little bit of a decline, not too bad. We're, like I said, I think we're already past 102 for Q4. So, we're on the upswing. We're coming back up. GPlugin, not a whole lot. Talkatu, we'll talk more about that in a minute, but only 2 commits there. Pidgin 2, we had 1 commit. That was a pull request we merged. We need to figure out when we're going to get the Pidgin 2 release out, but we'll get there. And then HASL had 15 commits. We'll get into all those in a minute. And I'll do an overview on what each of those projects are for those of you that are like, what are these things? Okay. Infrastructure. JetBrains renewed our licenses for UTrack and Team City. And we seem to have finally handled the web crawler issue on HD Keeper. We're not done with that yet, but we're okay. And I just remembered there's something I was supposed to add to this and I didn't. So I'll put that in after the presentation. But we're working on getting track migrated to a static site. So track, that's developer.pidgin.im. The track instance, it's a very old Python app. It's very resource hungry. It's got a huge Postgres database with it, stuff like that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to crawl it so we can just turn it into static pages. Except the last time, well, whatever, my most recent crawl of it, this is one of my first few attempts at it, I ended up with 12 gigs of static HTML. That's too much for a static site. So I need to figure out what happened there and get that taken care of and removed. Because we don't want to serve up 12 gigs of a static site because that's too much. But that's one of the plans for the infrastructure, is to get that to no longer be a dynamic app at all, and then it just be static site and we go from there. All right. As I mentioned, no Pidgin 2 releases. We've only had one commit. We need to figure out when we want to get it released and get it out the door. But we will at some point. We just need to decide when. All right. Pidgin 3. So the Pidgin 3 updates are broken into two sections. There is a maintainability and then a, what do I call the other one? Modernization. There we go. So the maintainability, this isn't everything. I just try to get the highlights because there's a lot of simple task stuff that doesn't, like, we're not going to mention every single commit, right? There was 102 commits. I'm not going to list them all. That's too much work. So one of the big things is we now require GTK 4 and glib 2.76. Those numbers are probably going to get bumped one more time in the near future to GTK 4.12. But what this means is those dependencies alone pretty much mean we're not targeting any single long-term support distribution, right? We're not trying to lock ourselves in until we're much, much closer to a release onto who can run it and who can't, right? And one of the things we're going to be planning to do is what we officially package and release for Linux users is going to be a flat pack, so that anybody on any distro can have the most up-to-date version. And we don't have to worry about, like, you know, somebody running a 10-year-old supported version of Ubuntu going, I can't update. Well, okay, here's your upgrade option, is to go to Flatpak. Or maybe Snap or something. I don't know. I don't really want to do Snap because it's such a, the ROI on Snap isn't good for us. But that's another story. Anyways, we fixed some minor issues that ScanBuild found. ScanBuild is a static analysis tool. It'll look at your code and try to find issues in it and then tell you about them. So we found some minor stuff there. We took care of that. We removed internal.h. Internal.h, I think, goes all the way back to the game, the early days of game. It was a header file that was like a utility header file to include a whole bunch of stuff for you. And of course it just became a dumping ground for other stuff, but we have now completely removed that. It is no longer there, doesn't exist. You cannot include it. The dumping ground has been rehabilitated and everything's back to normal. Next up, we removed the plugin pref API. The plugin pref API was a way to give core plugins or libpurple plugins a way to give preferences, hence the name plugin pref. We've changed the way the settings work in Purple 3, specifically in GPlugin, the plugin loader library underneath, or that Pidgin 3 uses, Purple 3 uses, both, whatever. And the plugin pref API just became not necessary anymore. Plus it didn't cover all the use cases we wanted to, blah, 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 so away it went. We removed a whole bunch of dead code from various places. We almost, for example, we almost have gtkconf.c removed. We're not quite there yet. There's still like 150 lines there or something. But for comparison, when I took over the project in January of 2016, that file was over 10,000 lines long. And now we almost have it removed. What's happened is, as you can tell by the next bullet point, we replaced the old Pidgin conversation with a new widget, right? So the old Pidgin conversation was in gtkconf and all that stuff. And what we've done is we've taken all the stuff that was kind of dumped in there, again, a giant dumping ground of everything, and we modularized it up, componentized it, whatever you want to call it. And that way we have these smaller source files that are easier to manage and reason about, right? And that's one of the goals we're trying to get to overall. Like when it comes to our maintainability, you know, we want things to be maintainable. Having multiple files that are 10,000 lines of code and just spaghetti all over the place, those aren't maintainable. So, all right, next up, modernization. We added G-object introspection support for IRC-v3. This is based on a part of GPlugin now that we call GPlugin introspection. We're getting a weird bug with it that we're trying to figure out, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. But we'll get it at some point. We're just not there yet. But what this means is the IRC-v3 plugin can build a GIR file, and we can build documentation for it from that GIR file. What that means is somebody can subclass, we haven't proven this, but the goal of this is that somebody can subclass our IRC-v3 protocol plugin in another language, and it'll just work. It'll work inside of Purple, but yeah. All right, so we added Purple Protocol roster for managing server-side roster contacts and lists. Previously, these were functions like add buddy, add chat, add group in the Purple Protocol info structure. We've now created the Purple Protocol roster that has those functions. All of them are built and set up to be asynchronous because most of the time you have to go ask the server and the server doesn't respond immediately. But when it does respond, then you can kick it back and go from there. So one of the reasons why Pidgin 2 and earlier are so dialogue heavy is because of that, right? So like you would ask somebody to be added to your contact list, or maybe it's not dialogue heavy, but you would ask somebody, or you would ask to add somebody to your contact list. The protocol plugin would ask the protocol would then maybe ask the person, then the person would have to accept it, right? And then it would come back to you, and then it would be like, so-and-so has added you, or whatever, right? And that whole process obviously doesn't happen fast. It should be asynchronous. It now is. So now we can update the UI more properly. We don't have to like spit out a dialogue, stuff like that, which will make things much happier. All right, we added a Purple Protocol contact search interface for searching contacts. So historically, we haven't really had a way for you to search contacts. There's been ways like it's been implemented by protocol actions or account actions, and then it would use a request interface to show a search dialog. We haven't implemented the UI part of this yet, but this gives us a way so that the UI can just ask a protocol, hey, I want to search for a contact on this account with these with this keyword or whatever, right? And that's what this interface is built for. Like I said, right now there's no UI portion for that yet, but this was so we could start migrating more of the stuff in the protocols to this interface and get away from those account actions and that kind of stuff. So next up, we added a status window for IRC-v3 accounts. One of the #1 feature requests we've gotten for the IRC protocol, and from people who say that Pidgin's not a real IRC client, whatever, I can't think of the right terminology right now, is that we don't have a status window. So we added one. It has some kinks and stuff like that. We need to work it out. But so like when you get an unknown message, something like that, that shows up in the status window, the message of the day, all that comes up in the status window. That status window is just a special conversation for that account, and it just gets treated like any other conversation like you would expect it to. Next up, we added the Purple Protocol contacts interface for interfacing with contacts. Now, this is a little weird. So this is different than the protocol stuff. The roster stuff, sorry. The roster stuff is for managing a contact list. The contacts interface is for, I'm blanking on exactly how this works because we did this like 4 months ago. This is for like not finding contacts, it's a search. What does this thing do again? Hold on, I have to quickly refresh myself because I can't speak to it because I can't remember at all right now. Usually I dry run these presentations and I didn't, and this is why I dry run them. So that I have a fresh memory of everything. All right, so what do we have in here? We have, oh, okay, that's what this is for. Yes, okay. So similar, this has now all new async methods and stuff for stuff like getting the profile. So previously in Pidgin 2, when you would want to get the user info or the profile info for somebody, what would happen is the UI would tell the protocol to go get that info, and it would pop up a dialog box because it wouldn't know when the protocol is done, and the protocol didn't have a way to pop up the dialogue, and it was messy, right? So then what would happen is if you close that dialogue before the response came in, when the response came in, the dialogue would get reopened and other weird stuff like that, right? Now with the contacts interface, and everything being async, that dialogue's not going to pop up until the protocol uh, response actually gets to you, and then we can display it and stuff like that. This also added, this also replaced the protocol actions, or I think it was blist node actions, so that given a contact information, remember contact information replaces buddies, or contact information is how we represent and interact with any contact inside of libpurple. So if you're in an IRC channel with 1,000 people in it, you have 1,000 contact infos created, one for each one of those people. But so what the get actions and get menu does is that'll give you a G action group and a G menu. Given a contact info, the protocol can now give you actions and a menu, so you can pop up context menu and stuff like that. So that's that part. We created the new Pidgin conversation widget. This is still a work in progress. This is mostly a migration right now to get us to something that's easier to maintain. It needs a lot of UX done to it yet. It needs a lot of polishing, a lot of cleanup, but it's there, it works, and it's not manually built from C code anymore. So that's good. Next up, we added a list of messages to Purple Conversation. Previously, the way messages ended up in a conversation window was there was a method called Purple Conversation write message, and this was just kind of like a process that went through and then displayed it in the window, and the logger was hooked into that, and the logger would then take that message and write it, right? Now we have a G list of actual message objects that live on the conversation, right? So the conversation is holding the current list of messages that are shown for that conversation. This is going to get expanded out later on when we finish integrating the history adapters and everything. These lists are going to be like a purple history or message history or something. So like they'll only have loaded in enough messages for the backlog, stuff like that. And they won't have, like, you know, if you're sitting in an IRC channel for 30 days, it won't have 30 days worth of messages in it loaded in memory at once. So that's the idea. This is the first step to getting there. We're not to that part yet, though. And then next we added Purple Protocol Conversation. This is similar to the contact stuff where it's just kind of cleaning a bunch of this stuff up. Precisely, again, I should have reviewed this better. Oh, right. So we currently have, or one of the paths we went down in Purple 3, which ended up not being a great path, was we had Purple Conversation, then we had Purple Chat Conversation, then we had Purple Chat Conversation, Purple Chat, or no, Protocol IM Conversation, and Protocol Chat Conversation. The thing is, though, when those were created, it made sense. Remember, this is like 10 years ago that these were created, because there was still a very big distinction in chat networks across instant messages or DMs and then chats or channels, right? Today, those don't exist. A DM is just like a group DM is just like a channel. The main differences we used to have were stuff like there was a member list in a channel or a chat, and typing notifications didn't exist in chats, but they existed in IMs. Those were the two big main features. Anybody who's used chat since in those past 10 years or so will know that typing notifications are in any type of chat. Doesn't matter if it's a DM, a group DM, or a channel, right? And member lists exist everywhere now, especially group DMs. They've always been there in channels, chats, whatever you want to call them. But now a lot of protocols even have a member list for a DM, right? Because it's possible for you as a user to leave a DM, right? Or a direct message between you and another user. You can just leave it, right? Just like, I don't want to do anything here anymore. I'm gone, right? So we need the member list support there too. So what we do with Purple Protocol Conversations is we took all those ideas and we put them into one interface, right? So this has send message, or all the methods are now async again, because this is a protocol interface, and the protocols, we don't get a response immediately, so they have to be async. So we have send message, set topics for setting the topic in a channel or group DM. And we also changed the way that you can join a channel now. But before I mention that, we're kind of changing the terminology a little bit here. So historically in Pidgin and game, we had IMs and chats, which were instant messages, a one-to-one message, and chats, which was multiple user chat. With the advent of group DMs, which Pidgin 2 and earlier never really supported well, that kind of clouds what a chat is, right? So in Pidgin 3, at least in the API, and probably in the general terminology when we get to that point for the documentation and everything, is we now have 3 types of conversations. They're all the same object. That's just a flag that says what kind they are. But that's a DM, a direct message between 2 people, right? A group DM, which is between X amount of people, and then a channel. The main difference between a channel and a group DM is that a channel is expected to be like part of the infrastructure of the protocol. So like on IRC, an IRC channel, right? Like you can search for that, you can find it, right? Where so yeah, in the IRC that makes sense too. But let's talk about it more on Slack, because you can have group DMs there too. You can't on IRC. At least I don't think there's a spec for it yet. But so on Slack, you've got your normal channel interface where you can search for, create a channel that other people can search for, stuff like that, right? And channels generally have some sort of moderation to them, right? There's somebody that's an owner or a moderator, and they can kick and ban people, change topics, stuff like that, right? Whereas a group DM is pretty much just a number of people together in a conversation that isn't open to the public. It's generally private. It can't be searched for. And there's not necessarily any type of like permissions in it, except maybe the owner can do some stuff, the owner being the person that created it. So because of all that, we had to change the way of how a protocol can actually join a channel, right? So remember, channel is now an infrastructure built into the protocol thing, not an ephemeral group DM, right? So we added a new data structure called purple channel join details. And this there's a get channel join details in the conversation interface that a protocol will implement that will return the channel join details object just says like whether or not the protocol supports passwords or a nickname per chat. And if we come up with other ideas or other things we need to fit in there, we'll do that. And then the UI will grab that from the protocol, present it to the user. The user will then fill out the fields that it needs to from that, which include the name, a password if it's available, which account they're using, and then if they can specify a nickname, right? Then the UI will take that. They will call the protocol's join channel async, and then it'll try to join. The way this worked in Pidgin 2 and earlier is we passed around a hash table that just had a list of commonly used names and stuff like that, and it was really messy. Like it worked, but it was really messy, but kind of sucked and was hard to document and make it work right. And now it's gone because now we just have join channel or join channel details. It works fine. Likewise, we've now also added set avatars for conversations. Many protocols will allow you to set an avatar for a conversation. Typically, you can't do that for a DM because you just show the other sides or the other, whatever, the remote sides avatar. But like a group DM or a channel, you can typically set an avatar for that, at least on like XMPP. You can set an avatar on Discord for group DMs, I believe. Slack has something in there too. I forget what else. And then we added a method for send typing as well to this interface. So before, like I said, the only send typing stuff was in the purple protocol IM conversation interface. Now we just have a send typing. This is not an asynchronous method because we don't necessarily care that the protocol accepted that we're sending typing, right? Or that we're typing. So this is just a kind of fire and forget. And yeah. Okay, so that takes care of most of the Pidgin 3 stuff here. So GPlugin, we didn't actually have any releases. We were trying to get 0.42 released before the State of the Bird. It didn't happen. It's okay. We're close. We'll get it done soon. But some of the important things here are we added version macros to all public symbols. What this means is this will help us find and replace deprecated symbols. It'll also help people understand if they're trying to use a symbol that's newer than a version that they're trying to depend on. But more importantly is this lets us add some more metadata and symbol visibility to the symbols because everything has these version macros. And that's important because QLogic has decided for some reason, not complaining, I'm actually ecstatic that I don't have to do this. He's been trying to get libpurple and Pidgin 3 compiling with Microsoft C compiler. And it compiles. It doesn't quite work right yet, but this was one of those things because symbol visibility under Microsoft's compiler is everything is hidden, so you have to document it, make it public, blah, blah, blah. having this mechanism in place allows us to do that, as well as all the other things I just mentioned. So that's one of the big things that's coming soon. And what that means is when Pidgin 3 gets released on Windows, it's going to be most likely compiled under Visual Studio and not under the minimalist GNU for Windows, which is a plus or a minus. I don't know. But it should integrate better with Windows since it's going to be using Microsoft C compiler. So, yeah. Aside from that, there was a bunch of missing dependencies in the build system. So like if you just started to do the build for GPlugin on Windows and you just did Ninja Test, or you just did Ninja Test in general, the tests that depended on plugins would fail because the plugins didn't build because the test didn't depend on the plugin. So that's all been fixed there. And then likewise, like Pidgin, GPlugin now requires GTK 4.10 and glib 2.76. Again, those numbers are going to go up. We were waiting for Fedora 39 to release to get to GTK 4.12. GTK 4.12 has some nice features we want to use. And that's one of the reasons why some parts of the user interface haven't been updated yet, because we're waiting to move to that milestone. Aside from that, we had quite a few bug fixes in the code base. Nothing major, but it was just like, oh, this weird test case is weird, blah, blah, blah. We do have one existing bug that we need to figure out. I mentioned a little bit with the GPlugin introspection stuff with the IRC v3 protocol plugin in libpurple. We haven't quite figured it out yet. It's weird. One of the symbols is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and there's like 5 things involved, so we haven't quite narrowed it down yet, is the problem. Anyways, so let's talk about Talkatu. Talkatu is a library that was supposed to be shared chat components in GTK4. That was its goal, or its goal was so that other GTK-based chat clients could use them as well, and then we could all maintain them together, and then no one of us has to build these weird, complicated widgets that do like WYSIWYG and stuff like that, right? We could focus on other parts of our clients than that. The problem is one of the biggest problems with Talkatu when it comes to Pidgin is that Pidgin there's a split between its core and its user interface, which means that stuff like a message class can't use any UI elements, right? So libpurple needs to be able to pass messages around, so those messages can't be tied to a user interface. Talkatu was it required GTK, so it pulled in user interface elements, right? The idea at one point was that we would core UI split Talkatu, but then that just gets messy too. So we decided not to go that route. The other issue is, so the way we had this implemented previously was, the libpurple had its own message class that the protocols and the UI used. And then what we did is inside of, because we were using the Talkatu history and input widgets, what would happen was Pidgin created a subclass, or Talkatu message was an interface. So Pidgin message subclassed purple message, but implemented the Talkatu message class to wire everything together. The problem with that is when you start realizing that you're going to have thousands of messages loaded at a time to do this weirdo glue code stuff, you realize you're going to just be wasting tons and tons of memory, and you don't want to do that. But the final nail in the coffin for Talkatu was we could not figure out a way to handle emojis decently either. So when I talk emojis, I don't just mean Unicode emojis. If it was just Unicode emojis, this wouldn't matter at all. But we need to support emojis on Slack, Discord, Twitch, whatever, right? And when you start looking at those emoji sets, they get crazy. I'm probably misspeaking because I haven't looked in a while, but like Slack is like 3,000 custom emojis per instance. Discord is like 1,000 per server. And Twitch is a lot, like 30,000 plus global emotes that are possible. So like if you're subscribed to everybody, right? Not that you're going to, but you know, even if you're subscribed to like 1% of Twitch, you still have like something like, actually it's gotta be more than 30,000. What am I saying? You've got like 1,000 emotes easy, right? Maybe 10,000 if you're subscribed to 1% of Twitch. And if we were going to do a wrapper class thing before, like I described with the messages, and do that for emojis, that just doesn't scale. We're just going to eat all your RAM, and nobody wants that. So, unfortunately, because of that, we have to retire Talkatu. But it, you know, we're not able to reach our goal of it being standalone widgets because of those reasons, right? Because Talkatu needs to know how to render the emojis, but libpurple needs to know how to define them as well. So, you know, that's where that memory duplication problem comes in. So that it doesn't scale to that. That said, Talkatu did definitely fulfill, or, you know, it fulfilled part of its purpose, right? It helped us get away from WebKit and re-implement and replace WebKit in our build, and it also let us try out a bunch of new ideas and stuff. And we're probably going to be replicating a lot of that in Pidgin itself, just to make things work in a similar way, right? So yeah, that's the idea there. All right, Finch. The other bad news of this stream. Finch is no longer enabled by default. The reason for this is that we're busy working on Pidgin and libpurple, and no one, including myself, is really interested in maintaining it. We're looking at pulling it out of the main source code repository, but that means that the Finch 2 releases would also have to be pulled out. I mean, they don't have to be pulled out, but it's going to get real confusing if we have to move commits between repositories and stuff like that. They're going to get different commit hashes, yada, yada, yada. So, like, we want to do that, but we haven't done it yet. But basically, unless somebody steps up to start working on Finch 3, it's just going to kind of be pushed off to the side, and I don't want to say archived, but mothballed, right? Like, if somebody comes around to pick it up, cool, but yeah. That also means probably nothing's going to happen with libgnt either. So we'll see. All right, next up, we've got HASL. HASL is the hassle-free authentication and security layer. I wrote this because the existing SASL, simple authentication and security layer libraries, sucked. The existing SASL libraries are mostly intended to be used by client or server, and they didn't integrate well with the rest of our code base when you're talking about using glib and gobject and stuff like that, whereas HASL does. But anyway, so we released 0.2.0 on August 4th. We used gair set literal where we should have been using it before and we weren't. We implemented the anonymous SASL mechanism. We added a bunch of missing documentation because sometimes you just forget to do it. We added the version API, including versioning all the symbols like we did for GPlugin and Pidgin as well. And then there were some weird issues with the plain mechanism that we addressed as well. So setbacks, I don't think we had any. We kind of unburdened ourselves a bit by getting rid of Talkatu and Finch, because those would have been holding us back. But aside from that, that's pretty much it. So this is a demo. This is going to be a little bit of a dangerous demo. I tried to get as much tested as I could, but I ran out of time. So I already did the build. So those of you that have been to the State of the Bird before, you'll know how we look right now. Again, the UI is lacking a lot of polish. The list over here is real bare bones right now. Once we get to GTK 4.12, we're going to swap out the widgets in the back end for this to something that's very similar, but something that will give us more control and let us do more fun things. So like we don't have like a notification field or anything like that. But so those of you that have been around from Pidgin 2 and stuff like that, you'll know we used to have two windows, one for the contact list and then one for the conversation, or maybe multiple conversation windows. Both of those have been integrated into one window right now. Eventually, we're going to add support for you to split this out, and you'll get separate windows that'll be the same thing. So your contact list will be displayed multiple times, blah, 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 but you can have conversations in one window or the other. And we just haven't coded it yet, but everything's there to do it. We just haven't actually like allowed you to do it yet. So we haven't written the code for it. But anyway, so this is a demo protocol plugin, this is contact list. One of the cool things about the demo protocol plugin is it lets us do fun stuff like trigger notifications. Again, there's no badge or anything here yet. We're waiting to the GTK 4.12 stuff to tell you that. But so like previously in Pidgin 2, when somebody adds you to their contact list and we'd say, oh, they've added you. You want on back? There used to be this little dialogue in the bottom of the contact list window. Now you just get a normal notification with the same buttons, and you can even just ignore it and it's gone, right? So conversations are a little bit more bare bone. So now that we're not using Talkatu anymore, we don't have the Talkatu formatting bar. We'll get that. We'll address that at some point, but we'll get there. A few other things to note is we used to have the avatar icon over here. Avatars are currently busted. I kind of forgot about that. We got to go back and fix it. It's okay. But that's going to go right here. And then this guy here is going to show you like info about the conversation or the members in it, that kind of stuff. So we're getting there. We're not quite there yet. But you know, pieces are here. This is just, like we mentioned, we have a new conversation widget. This is the new conversation widget. It's not by any means complete, but it's functional, right? We're get things functional, then iteratively build on top of it and go from there. But yeah, so the Echo bot just responds back whatever you say, right? So I am, there you go, right? So one of the newest fun things we're going to do, and this is where it's going to be a dangerous demo, is we're going to add an account. So you all know we've been working on IRC-v3. One of the things that one of the secret goals I had was that I wanted to be using Pidgin 3 full-time for IRC by this presentation. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get there yet. We'll talk more about that why in later, but we've gotten to the point where it's usable, and it's usable for a bunch of fun stuff. For example, we're gonna set up a protocol using IRC-v3. My username for irc.chat. I think is it chat? I don't remember. Hold on. If this doesn't work, we'll fix it, right? So we're gonna set up a Twitch account and we're gonna connect to the channel right now. One of the things you have to do here though is chat or because we're using the IRC-v3 protocol plugin to talk to Twitch, we have to set a server password instead of a user password. So I'm gonna pull this out of Seahorse real quick. Seahorse. Because we don't have a way for other fields to use the password manager yet. That's something we need to take care of, but we will get there. So Seahorse is a password manager, or it's a way to access your password manager from GNOME. All right, so you notice, right? Everything's hidden by default, and like I can just type some random gibberish. You can see your password, whatever, right? But I'm gonna go put the real password in here, and then we're gonna hit save. The UX here kind of sucks. We understand. We're getting rid of it, or we'll clean it up. We just haven't gotten there yet. So as we mentioned earlier, there is a status window now, right? So we get the status messages from Twitch as we connected, right? But now using the new join channel menu, you know, we can select our Twitch account. We're going to join #RWRim. There's no password. Remember, IRC has passwords. But now we are in Twitch chat using Pidgin 3 with the IRC-v3 protocol plugin. Obviously, emojis and stuff don't work yet, but this is all here. This obviously works for normal IRC as well. Twitch chat is kind of a weird IRC wannabe, but not, but is, but isn't. It's weird. But you know, you can see that it clearly works. So the big thing that's missing, or well, the big thing that's missing yet from anybody being able to use Pidgin 3 full time is, you'll notice we have a contact list. We're not going to have a chat list. The chat list, we already have that, right? That's in the conversations. The goal of what we're trying to get to is that Pidgin 3 will remember the conversations you're in, and then when a protocol connects, it will rejoin those channels for you automatically if it needs to rejoin them manually, right? So like IRC doesn't know that you're on that channel, but Discord does, right? So like when IRC connects, you know, it'll do its connection stuff, and then it'll go, hey, what conversation or what channels am I supposed to be in? And then it'll reopen those, right? That's the missing part right now. And the main reason that's missing is because we need to do, well, we don't need to. I want to get rid of the old status subsystem first because that's blocking a lot of weird stuff at startup and initialization, and it's causing other issues for unit tests and stuff like that. So once we get the old status system removed, then we'll be able to do that and go forward. So I think that's pretty much the biggest stuff, right? Oh, you'll notice we have a Pidgin menu now, right? We used to have buddies in the contacts menu. We stripped those down and combined them into this menu. Get user info. Did we implement this? I think we did. So if I go to demo, did I put this in for anybody? I thought I did, but maybe not. I guess I didn't. Okay. That's another thing we need to do and go from there. So yeah, we're getting there, right? Aside from that, nothing else has really changed. Yeah. So, all right. So that'll conclude the demo for the moment. And then, so what are our next steps? Just a reminder, everyone, if you have any questions, you can type ask or exclamation point ask, and I will take all your questions after the presentation. We're almost done. So yeah. All right, so next steps. These are things we're going to be working on between now and the next day of the bird. This list has been mostly the same for a while, except for a few things. So we want to finish adding new functionality to the new contact list. We added, actually, I forgot about that. We added some basic stuff. Yeah. So we added the start of the context menu, but we're not done yet, right? So like you can hit message and open up your message window and then view profile. I thought we implemented this for somebody, but apparently we didn't, right? Oh, we got this far. We output what it is if we have it. But we didn't actually display it anywhere yet. So, you know, small steps, we're getting there. Aside from that, we need to finish migrating the existing protocol plugins and the other API to the new contact API. That includes, I think Bonjour's done, but that includes Gadu and XMPP. Speaking of Gadu is going to be moved out of tree at some point. I'm kind of holding off on that because it's going to sit there in bit rot for a while because no one's going to think about it until, or when we split it out of the tree, because none of the currently active developers use Gadu. Gadu is a chat network based out of Poland, and that's where the majority of its users are. I'm not Polish, neither are the other active developers, therefore we don't use it much. So yeah. Also, we want to completely remove the old buddy list API. We've got a lot of that done, but the pieces that still depend on that are the XMPP protocol plugin, the Gadu plugin, right? Those are still, they're not converted to the contact API yet, so they're still using that old API, which is keeping us from deleting that old code. We want to finish converting to the new status API. We're actually quite close on this. When it comes to the contact API, we've been doing that in tandem with the status API, because the way we show presence for contacts and stuff like that, or buddies and whatever, like there's no good way to move from the buddy API to the contact API while still using the old status API. So while we've been doing that change, we've also been moving from the status API to the presence API, which is what we call the new status API. So those are intertwined. There's a lot of moving parts there. It kind of sucks to do it, but that's what we're working on. We also want to finish integrating the new history API. We should probably take this out and push it back a little further. There's a lot here that we don't really know yet and how it's going to work. So it's like, yeah, it's here. We're going to work on it, but like, we're not going to finish it for a while. So we should probably move it out of here, but that's okay, right? The history API was written by a summer code student a couple of years ago now. And the basics are there to be implemented, but we need, some smarter like glist models and stuff so that we don't have to keep everything in memory. And like when we request an item, instead of having it in memory, it'll go pull it out of a database, stuff like that. And that's stuff we haven't really been able to get to yet until we finish the contact window and getting stuff moved to all that new stuff. So like earlier when I mentioned that purple conversation now has a list of messages, that's what I'm talking about. That list of messages needs to be able to smart enough to be able to talk to the history API and stuff like that. And we're just not there yet, is where we are. But as I mentioned earlier, so the goal for this State of the Bird, or the seeker goal, was that I would be using Pidgin 3 for IRC full time. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But the main thing I said that we need is we need to keep track of the conversations and have the protocol automatically join the channels at startup, because I'm on like, I don't know, 20 IRC channels, and I'm not going to rejoin them every time I have to reopen Pidgin 3. That is going to get very tedious very quickly. And so, yeah. We need to get that finished. And then from there, I can probably start using it full time. There's still a million things missing from the implementation. But as you saw, we can send and receive messages, right? So we got to start somewhere. The idea of getting me using Pidgin 3 full time for anything is so that we can start dog fooding and start finding the annoyances and start working on those. And, you know, that'll just, you know, move to more motivation, stuff like that. Because now, like, I'm not like, I don't know, Pidgin 2 works well enough, right? It's like, no, now I'm using Pidgin 3. Now we're going, right? That's the idea. All right, so into the questions. Our first question comes from Nopefish and says, does it support the Twitch chat features you can see on the web version? What we have right now does not do any of that. What you saw in the demo was just the IRC plugin. That is literally just chat. There is some stuff you can do with just the Twitch IRC chat, but we haven't implemented any of that yet. This was connecting directly via the IRC support. So this is like if you connected from any IRC client to the Twitch chat, that's what you get, right? You just get chat. We are planning on building a full-blown Twitch protocol plugin, one where it'll do the OAuth flow and everything for you, so you don't have to worry about that. One that will handle emojis. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons Talkatu got shut down was we can't handle Twitch emojis with a wrapper like we had for the messages and Talkatu and all that. So Talkatu had to go away so that libpurple can create an emoji class, and then Pidgin can just use that direct emoji class and then render it to the screen. I've talked to the GTK developers a lot about how to integrate that into our conversation window. I have a good understanding of how it should work, but I haven't done a proof of concept yet. We might pick that up on another stream here in the near future, just doing that part. I've been delaying that stuff because I've been worried about trying to get IRC usable for me. When it comes to other Twitch stuff, like showing hype trains, channel rewards, let's go with those for now. We might want to do something with that. I'm not sure how we would integrate it yet. What we might do, if we're going to handle it somehow, is because the protocol plugins can't depend on a user interface, we'd have to create a UI plugin to do it. I'm not quite sure how we would work that yet, but it's something on my mind. Just similar to like the highlight messages, and like if you're streaming, you can see stuff like, or if you're a streamer or a mod, you'll get a notification, or you'll get like an info box around messages when it's like, came from raid from so-and-so, return chatter, first time chatter, stuff like that. I want to get support into libpurple for that kind of stuff. So Twitch would just be able to integrate with that just fine. But that's down the road stuff, right? It's not a big deal, right? Or it's not something it's not something we're thinking about right now. Or like how to implement it. It's like, yeah, it's there. We should be able to do it. It's probably gonna be like a message flag and like an extra property, or maybe it'll just be a message tag, right? Or a combination of message tags. I don't know, right? We have some options there to make it work. But when it comes to stuff like extensions, I don't think we're gonna do extensions. Like the overlay extensions that you see on Twitch, where like, you know, you can click on something on top of the video or like interact with the video and you get like a menu and stuff like that. We're probably not going to do any of that because all of that is HTML and JavaScript. And I don't want to put a web renderer anywhere in Pidgin 3. Even when we're talking about OAuth support and stuff like that, the running idea for that is that libpurple will come with a binary that has the web renderer and everything in it, and then it'll communicate to that via interprocess communication, but that will stay as a separate entity, separate executable in memory, right? So like if anything happens there, you can't get back into libpurple or into Pidgin. And that wouldn't work with the Twitch extensions. So yeah. But yeah, aside from that, emojis are on the radar. I would love to do something to be able to subscribe from Pidgin, but that's something we'll have to figure out, right? Ultimately, I do want to get Twitch video support in as well. We're obviously going to start with just viewing, But at some point in time, I would love to be able to do a Twitch stream from Pidgin, right? And I think you should be able to do that, but it's going to be a long time before we get there. So, all right. Hope I answered your question effectively. All right, next up. Dobbs asks, do I plan to make IRC easier for people who aren't familiar with it? Making options to do common IRC commands. So there's... I don't know that we can necessarily make IRC easier per se with the current setup. There's this idea I've had for a while that we will be implementing at some point that we haven't done yet. And that is that the basics of connecting to any chat network in Pidgin is harder than it needs to be. Right? So like this gets exacerbated when it comes to IRC and XMPP and Matrix, Slack, not so much Discord. But like the problem is when you start talking about servers, right? This is where things get really confusing, right? So like when somebody connects to like Facebook, for example, right? They just want to connect to Facebook. Same thing with Google Chat, right? But when it comes to IRC, people don't necessarily know they know they want to connect on IRC. They don't necessarily know that they want to connect to Libera Chat or OFTC or something like that, right? Like the people who know specifically which server they want to connect to, they don't need our help, right? That's the clear part. So what we want to do, or what I want to do, is instead of presenting the users a protocol and then having them specify their username in a server and blah, 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 I want the protocols, or I want the user interface, or I want the protocols to provide a list of networks they support, and then whether or not they support a custom network. And then the user interface by default will show the specific networks they can connect to. And then, you know, they can do a custom, or then if they're like not on the list, then we can show which ones are custom, right? So like, instead of getting like, right. So instead of getting a protocol here, think of this as like an assistant setup. And instead it would list like Libera Chat, Facebook, Twitch, Discord, Slack, right? And then you'd hit that, which would then select the protocol, and then you specify your username or whatever you need to, right? But like at the bottom of that list, or maybe it's down here, right? It says custom, right? And then when you hit custom, it brings you more to this interface, but then the other one continues the assistant. And then, you know, like, for example, like when we start talking about IRC, right? So like the amount of advanced options for IRC is a lot, right? What port do you want to connect to? Do you need to use TLS? Do you have a server password? What do you want to set for an IDENT name? What's your real name? What's your HASL login name? What HASL mechanisms do you want to use? Do you want to allow plaintext HASL over unencrypted connections, right? Typical users have no idea what any of that is. So we would want to, you know, like for OFTC doesn't support HASL, I think, to identify to NICServe, right? So like the HASL stuff, like we would have that built in as an option for the protocol to say like, yeah, it doesn't support HASL, right? Or so we'd have a network that says OFTC, this is the main server names you can pick from, and then, you know, doesn't support HASL. So then we don't show them the support, the HASL stuff, that the HASL options and stuff like that. And then that way, you know, we're getting more of the clutter out of the way for new users and making it easier. But yeah, like IRC, like after that, you know, so what we're going to be doing at some point is like when you hit join channel, right now we have the join channel dialog and we have the room list. The room list, I don't think we have anything that actually works with the room list right now. Or I'd have to connect XMPP account, whatever. But what I want to do is for the protocols that support searching for channels, I just, you know, have it, you know, as you're typing, it'll search. Or, you know, we have a browse button down here which says a search up there or something, right? This interface doesn't need to stay this way. This is just one way to do it right now, and this works for people that know what they're doing. But for people that are new to it, having a browse channels setup or something like that is obviously the way we want to go. We're just, you know, limited resources. We're trying to get to something working to get stuff rolling, kind of thing. But yeah, so anyways, the whole point of all that is then you don't have to worry about the join command, right? You can just, join a channel directly and then you're good. But if you're talking about like the mod features for like kicking somebody from a chat and stuff like that, most of that should be supported via the member list, which we don't have implemented yet. But yeah. So, all right. Do we have any more questions? I'll give you all a minute here. Because otherwise we're going to start wrapping it up here. Oh, you couldn't see anything I just showed you because of this. Sorry. Oh, because of that. All right. But yeah, so I guess I can reiterate that real quick, right? So instead of, selecting a protocol and then all this stuff, the network stuff would give you a list of networks. And then you'd have an advanced option or whatever, which would then take you to here. But then the other one would be an easier to follow thing because these values would be, I don't want to say pre-computed, but they'd be known for specific networks. And then, everybody wins. Like people can still have their fall through to do the advanced stuff, and people that that aren't as knowledgeable about it will be fine because they can get the easy interface. That's the idea anyway. But yeah, so then I was talking about the searching the channels, right? So like as you type, like right now, nothing happens, right? There's no like autocomplete anything or anything, right? Or there's none of that. But for the protocols that could support that, we could do an autocomplete list, or we could work that into the room list, or we could use the room list to do that. There's a bunch of ways to do it. We just need to figure it out. So. All right, no other questions by the looks of it, so we are going to move on. Oh, I was supposed to move the thing one more. All right, so closing notes. The biggest closing note I have is in 9 days from today, on November 18th, well, technically 8 for anybody that's already, whatever, it's late on November 9th. On November 18th, Pidgin turns 25 years old. We are one of the oldest open source projects, and no, even though I was trying really hard to come up with ideas and things to celebrate, I've got absolutely nothing right now. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to plan some stuff out throughout the year, some fun stuff like that. We have some rough sketches for a new 25-year anniversary sticker or birthday, whatever you want to call it, which will show up in the sticker store. Which there's a link to that. Also in the sticker store, we are going to be, I don't have any of them pre-made. I sent out the last one already. So we are working on some Pidgin magnets. They are the Pidgin text mark. Let me grab it real quick. I meant to grab this. So these are 3D printed, and then there's just a magnet stuck on the back. And we've got all sorts of them from this guy. Oh, it's lightning sucks on that, right? But all these are going to get added to the store very soon. I have test shipments out right now to make sure that the magnets don't cause issues. But we have all sorts of different styles of these things. I mean, here's the box that I've 3D printed so far. I'm well over 100 of them. We've got fun ones like a Christmas icon here, which is going to get chroma keyed a bit, but yeah. I even made a Thanksgiving one, which you can see right here. But all these will be going into the sticker store. We'll announce them on the main website and everything and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for that. Well, depending on what we end up with the design for the 25-year anniversary sticker, we're probably going to throw it on a shirt as well, which will end up in the merch store. The merch store is separate because that's on-demand printing of t-shirts and stuff, whereas the sticker shop are stuff that I get pre-ordered or make and then send out. But yeah, so aside from that, the main goals before the end of the year is I want to be using IRC, or I should say I need to be using IRC. I need to be using Pidgin 3 full time for IRC by the end of the year. And that will hopefully get us that much closer to the alpha. Right. I don't think I mentioned it in this State of the Bird, but I mentioned it previously. One of the issues we have, so we have a list of tickets that we have tagged for being in the alpha. The problem is these are like these are bigger concepts and stuff, and they don't necessarily like they're kind of nebulous is the word I'm looking for. Whereas picking a goal of making it so that I can use IRC-v3 and not lose my mind is, you know, that's helping to drive us to find features and make things work in the way we need them to, right? And the whole reason we picked IRC-v3 for this is that is the protocol that's the closest to being functional with all the new APIs. Like, sure, XMPP works, but it's still using a bunch of old APIs. So, you know, it's got a whole bunch of maintenance that has to go through and get cleaned up there. Plus, we want to create a new XMPP library, stuff like that, just to make everything easier. So, like, IRC-v3 became the candidate for it. And then, you know, once we have one of them done using all the new APIs, that means we've proven the new APIs. Maybe not like they're not bulletproof by any means, but we've proven they work, right? Obviously, everything's going to need tweaks, stuff like that. So that's the goal, right? Get one protocol in and get it functioning reasonably well, and then we can start worrying about the other ones. So once we have the IRC-v3 stuff going, I'm probably going to start going through the Twitch protocol plugin, which will be done out of tree. It's mentioned previously, all proprietary protocols or closed spec or whatever you want to call them are going to be out of tree, even if they're by first-party developers like me, right? There's a million ways we can package them together at the end of the day to ship it out, but it keeps the code base simple and clean, and there's no legality, no questionable legality code in the main code base, and that's the important thing. But then that'll also help us prove out how third-party protocol plugin developers can start working and start figuring out that workflow, because porting to your protocol plugin to Pidgin to Purple 3 is going to be a task. It's there used to be a lot of overlap between Purple 2 and Purple 3, and that's all gone now. So we're trying to find the ways to make things easier and help out those developers and get that documented and figured out ahead of time. So if anybody wants to start tinkering, they can. So yeah. All right. So I believe that is the last. Yep. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for coming by tonight. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to ask them on one of my next streams, or to ask on our discourse. We don't have a discourse link? Okay. Whatever. You can find it on the webpage, pidgin.im. You can find the link to the discourse there. Or otherwise, you know, join us on IRC, XMPP, or Discord as well. You can find links to all that on the contact page on the website. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming by tonight. And until the next time, adios.